Good morning. You're awfully festive and talkative today. Why is that? How could that be? You must not have been playing euchre till 1 a.m. Be still, my soul, the Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief, of pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide. In every change he faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, thy best, thy heavenly friend, through thorny ways leads to a joyful end. Be still, my soul, thy God doth undertake to guide the future as he has the past. Thy hope, thy confidence, let nothing shake. All now mysterious shall be bright at last. Be still, my soul, the waves and winds still know his voices ruled them when he dwelt below. Be still, my soul, begin the song of praise. On earth believing to the Lord on high. Acknowledge him in all thy words and ways. So shall he view thee with well-pleased eye. Be still, my soul, the Son of life divine, though passing clouds shall more brightly shine. Be still. I went to the mountain, I went to the ocean, I went to the wide open spaces, and I went to the sky. When all I really want to do is come home to my heart. You went to the mountains, and you went to the ocean. You went to the wide open spaces, and you went to the sky. And all you really want to do is come home to your heart. Do you have any heart? Do you have any heart? Do you have any heart to come home to? Sometimes you have trouble. Sometimes you have pain. See you throw your hands up to ease your worried brain. When all you really want to do is come home to your heart. Do you have any heart? Do you have any heart? Do you have any heart to come home to? Oh, you've learned to lose. It's not that bad. You've learned to cry. But are you sad or just numb? Well, you've learned to lose. It's not that bad. You've learned to cry, but you're not sad. You just know. Or do you have any heart? Do you have any heart? Do you have any heart to come home to come home to come home to? Of course you do. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Good morning, church. We have a couple of announcements, and before I give those, I want to give a thank you to Jane Thompson, who reached out to Titus, our friend that usually sits actually at that table. He uses a wheelchair, and Titus recently suffered from a stroke. I talked to him on Tuesday or Wednesday it was, and he said he's just got a spirit of perseverance. But he says he's doing well. His body just keeps breaking down, and he's got to carry a toolbox everywhere he goes these days. So he is really welcoming of our prayers. Hopefully I'll get a chance to go out there and see him. He just lives in Saline. But I know a card is circulating, so thank you for doing that. And thank you for reaching out. If you notice someone isn't here that's usually here, reach out to Lily or I, or reach out to them yourselves. And if something's going on with you, please tell us. I'm saddest when I hear a month later that so-and-so was in the hospital, and I think, I would have gone. So tell us. That's what we're here for. That's what community does. We come out and we support one another, and we pray for one another, and we're there in the hardest times. So thank you for helping us to be there. We've got a lot going on in our community right now. Today actually is Brunch Bunch, which is our youth programming where our middle school and high school youth cook brunch themselves. And then the parents of the middle schoolers and high schoolers meet to support one another in what it's like to raise adolescents and teenagers. So it's a win-win. Youth go with Lily and Scott and some of our other youth leaders, and parents go with me. Next week, we have a great presentation by Colleen Creel, who some of you know. She has worked with youth at Pioneer for over 25 years, and she's going to present youth in the mental health crisis and give us some tools, especially geared to parents, but give us some tools of how to reach our youth and what kind of mental health issues they're up against. And also that weekend, we have the opportunity to host Music in the Black Church. It's going to be an amazing kaleidoscope of colors concert. So you'll hear the gospel mass being performed. I think there's a choir of 60, a combined choir of 60 voices. It is a kind of free will concert, which means there's no charge, but they'll likely pass a plate. So that begins at 4 p.m. on Sunday the 12th. So if you're able to come back and join it, it should be a great concert. I think that's it for announcements. So let us continue our worship with our New Beginnings series.
Good morning. Our scripture reading this morning comes from the first chapter of Ruth. It's this teeny little 4-chapter book that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, tucked in right after Judges. We're reading verses 1 through 14 this morning, and I'm reading from the Message translation. Once upon a time, it was back in the days when the judges led Israel, there was a famine in the land. A man from Bethlehem in Judah left home to live in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi. His sons were named Mahlon and Chilion, all Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They all went to the country of Moab and settled there. Elimelech died, and Naomi was left, she and her 2 sons. The sons took Moabite wives. The name of the first was Orpah, the second Ruth. They lived there in Moab for the next 10 years. But then the 2 brothers, Mahlon and Chilion, died. Now the woman was left without either her young men or her husband. One day, she got herself together, she and her 2 daughters-in-law, to leave the country of Moab and set out for home. She had heard that God had been pleased to visit his people and give them food, and so she started out from the place she had been living, she and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, on the road back to the land of Judah. After a short while on the road, though, Naomi told her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back. Go home and live with your mothers, and may God treat you as graciously as you treated your deceased husbands and me. May God give each of you a new home and a new husband." She kissed them, and they cried openly. They said, "No, we're going on with you to your people." But Naomi was firm. "Go back, my dear daughters. Why would you come with me? Do you suppose I still have sons in my womb who can become your future husbands? Go back, dear daughters, on your way, please. I'm too old to get a husband. Why, even if I said there's still hope, and this very night got a man and had sons, can you imagine being satisfied to wait until they were grown? Would you wait that long to get married again? No, dear daughters. This is a bitter pill for me to swallow, more bitter for me than for you. God has dealt me a hard blow." Again, they cried openly. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth embraced her and held on. Will you pray with me? God, open my mouth that I may speak. Open our hearts that we may receive. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts lead us to a better understanding of your compassion in life's fullness. Amen. If you're familiar with the book of Ruth, you're probably remembering one or two key takeaways from the story this morning. You may remember Ruth's loyalty to Naomi, which she pledges just after our reading this morning. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge or stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Your God, my God. You may remember something about Ruth being a Moabite, as we read. That is an outsider and an enemy to the Israelites. And that this story invites us to explore our own biases. You may also remember that eventually things turn around for Ruth and Naomi. Ruth goes on to remarry and has a child, Obed, who becomes the grandfather of King David. Ruth is a story of new beginnings. It calls us to change how we treat those who we perceive to be others. It invites us to embrace and welcome the other, to turn the customs and norms of the world upside down, to expect the unexpected. But sometimes, in our focus on these beautiful lessons from Ruth, we overlook the gut-wrenching nature of the story that starts it all. The book of Ruth begins with devastation, with famine, with stories of endings, not beginnings, migration, the death of Naomi's husband, and then the deaths of her two sons, the husbands of Ruth and Orpah. Naomi's sense that she owed it to her daughters-in-law to let them go, to send them back home to their mother's houses where they would be properly cared for. You know, in all of history's focus on Ruth being a story of new beginnings, we sometimes overlook the excruciating endings, including the devastating deaths that form the foundation of the story. Today, we're going to honor new beginnings we don't choose. Endings that devastated us. Unanticipated changes that leave us uncertain, lost, wandering, weeping, lamenting, grasping for meaning and purpose. Sometimes clinging to loved ones. Sometimes kissing them goodbye. Sometimes pushing them away. Today, I'll share 3 stories from people in our community who reached out to Darcy and me to share their stories of new beginnings. And the stories I share, as with those we've shared throughout this series, are shared with permission. When Jenny came to talk with me, she said, "The story you shared in your last sermon was about a new beginning you chose. Mine is about a new beginning I didn't choose." During an unexpected late evening walk, Jenny's husband told her he wanted a divorce. Jenny described the shock and devastation she experienced then and in the weeks following. Ultimately, Jenny has come to see that when any partner wants out of a relationship, the best outcome is for the relationship to end, but in the first moments and months, she couldn't see that. She grappled and bargained. She compromised and tried to make things work, as I'm sure so many of us have when relationships ended before we were ready. Concern for the well-being of her children kept Jenny going through the immediate anguish. Other people who had experienced divorce, friends some, but others barely acquaintances, came out of the woodwork. These people and others offered support, understanding, and acknowledgement. Pastors, therapists, friends who sat and walked, listened, and talked with her. Jenny remembers coming to FCC's contemporary service. At the time, it was still in the sanctuary, and it happened at noon, not at 9. And Jenny remembers coming and just weeping. She remembers how one person came and simply sat next to her. Throughout this, Jenny has found comfort in authors who write candidly about life's struggles, not just the pretty times. She shared a quote from author Glennon Doyle that has been meaningful for her. First the pain, then the waiting, then the rising. Jenny remembers the pain and the waiting, and she remembers the specific moment when she was ready to shift to the rising. Jenny realized that for her well-being, she had to accept what couldn't change. From that moment, everything shifted. It wasn't always a straight line to this point, but now she looks back and says, I am in the best place I've ever been. She's worked on her growing edges, and she can look back on that experience and see how it shaped her. Now, Jenny describes herself as an open book. She's willing to offer support to anyone who is going through divorce and others of life's most devastating challenges. First the pain, then the waiting, then the rising. Jamie, another member of our community, is still in the waiting. Jamie has had 2 devastating losses in the last few years. Her husband died after a long journey with Parkinson's disease in November of 2020. Less than a year later, her only son was diagnosed with cancer. He died late last summer. He was 42. Our series on New Beginnings has Jamie feeling especially aware of the unknowns that come after such devastating loss. Jamie said, it really feels like the end of your life, not just the end of life as you knew it, the end, the time it takes to grieve. She's still very much in the sorrow of those deaths and the processing of what might be next for her. As you know, grief is a journey that doesn't have a straight trajectory. It twists and it turns, it zigs and it zags. Jamie senses something new on the horizon, but she isn't sure what it is yet. Other than that, she wants to share something with the world. Right now, Jamie feels that it is a necessary part of her growth to wait patiently until the creativity comes. Waiting isn't passive, though. While she waits for clarity about what's next, she is finding meaning in spending time with her grandson and daughter-in-law, in activities with friends, and in service in the community. Jamie is grateful for the people who reached out, people who listened, friends who delivered meals and offered support to her son and her daughter-in-law as he was dying. Jamie said, folks didn't wait. They showed up right away. I can't emphasize how important that is. My own tendency would be to wait to be asked, Jamie said. It was the people who were in my space immediately who were the most helpful. Jamie has also found strength in her spirituality and her communities of faith, including in the last few months, FCC. Jamie shares openly, and she has shared openly about her grief on social media and with friends. Maybe that's our role as people in experience like this, Jamie pondered, to support each other until we can find God in it. The book of Ruth has new meaning for Jamie now. She's really connected with the story of Naomi, whose husband and son also died, and her grief and struggle. We talked together about how Naomi models for us that it's okay to feel bitter and angry and lost. It's comforting to remember that God is big enough to hold our pain, to walk with us in our anger, Jamie said. God is big enough. Gay experienced a different kind of new beginning she didn't choose. In 1997, Gay had 2 grown sons and a 10-year-old daughter. She was in good health. She saw a lump on her ankle. Doctors diagnosed the lump as a rare form of cancer. They watched it for about a year. But eventually, together with her husband Fred and her doctors, Gay decided her best option was to have an above-the-knee amputation of her leg. No synthetic knee is designed as well as the knee God made, Gay said as she shared her story with Darcy and me. Since the day after her amputation, she has had a prosthetic leg. Over the years, Gay has had many different prosthetics. They require maintenance and adjustments. In a journey that may have left some of us feeling completely disempowered, Gay has found ways to maintain her agency. When her initial orthopedic oncologist didn't meet her needs, she sought out another. There were only 3 in the state of Michigan at the time. She said, "I've been intentional about the people I've surrounded myself and my family with." Through the whole of her journey, Gay has found strength and inspiration in family and friends. She's so thankful for her husband Fred's steadfast love and support. She's grateful for her children and grandchildren. From the beginning, they have found grand and small ways to enjoy the beauties of life. Just 3 weeks after her surgery, they took a train trip to Chicago to see an art exhibit. The churches they've been a part of have been so important. And she has found ways to destigmatize her prosthetic leg and to educate friends and strangers alike about her experience. Her prosthesis has a name, Cynthia, like synthetic, or Cindy for short. When their grandkids visit, they often come and greet Cindy. Gay's journey hasn't always been easy. When she looks back after these 25 years, there are decisions she would change, things she would do differently. Still, she said, "You know, as silly as it sounds to say this, as far as being someone who's had an amputation goes, I've been pretty lucky." As she shared her story, Gay's deep desire to help others was clear. I want to share this experience with anyone for whom it would be helpful. I'm always willing to talk with folks to help raise awareness. Whoever I can help because of this story, I want to. As all of you know, from your own experiences with endings or new beginnings you didn't choose, each of these stories has so much more to them than I could know, and so much more than what I could have conveyed this morning. As I listened to these stories and reflected on the story of Ruth and Naomi, I noticed 5 common themes. First, endings that we don't choose are part of being human. Text breakfast this week was full of stories about endings. We shared, we cried, we understood each other. Death, job losses, children going off to college, relationships, miscarriages, having to move as we age in order to be closer to families. These types of loss are part of the human experience. That we're all here this morning in person or online means we've experienced loss and made it or are making it through. We'll likely experience endings we wouldn't choose again. 2, it's human to struggle with these types of experience. Naomi grappled with the devastation. She felt alone and bitter. She tried to push people away. She shared her misery openly. It is strength, not weakness, that has us crying out to God in anger or calling up a friend for help. 3, there's no one way to go through these journeys. Orpah decided to go home. Ruth decided to stay. Naomi pleaded and protested, lamented and tried to let go, but kept taking it one step at a time. Sometimes there is a clear ending or moment of transition, like in Jenny's story. Sometimes it's not as clear, like with Jamie's. 4, the importance of community and connection cannot be overstated. All of these friends, people who reached out, sometimes people who we don't know well, who ask, "Are you okay? You seem a little bit different today." If you're going through it today and you're not sure what to do, find connection. Drink water, connect with your body, one breath, one step at a time. Step outside and breathe fresh air, even just for a couple of seconds. Connect with nature. Reach out to a therapist or a trusted friend to talk with. "I'm having a hard time, and I just need to talk or not be alone right now." As Ruth and Naomi's friends model later in the story, we can listen to and care for one another in the depths of our despair. We can walk with one another in our pain and distress for as long as it takes. We can sit with one another in the waiting for as long as it takes. And when the time comes, we can celebrate with one another in the rising. If you feel like you have a friend who's struggling, reach out to them. Show up at the door with dinner. Make the hard phone call to check in. Humans are built to share connection, not to go through life alone. 5, sharing our stories can be part of our healing. With Gay, Jamie, Jenny, and so many others, there's an openness to sharing your stories, which comes, I think, from a commitment to doing whatever you can to be supportive of someone going through a similar situation. We share our stories to say you can make it through too. We share so that when someone else goes through something similar, they know they're not alone. So that we know there is hope in those low moments, even as we feel anguish and despair. To know that even in our moments of deepest distress, the seed of a new beginning may be there. Maybe one of the most important lessons in the book of Ruth is the story of Naomi. The example of Naomi's journey in and through bitterness and grief and devastation. Our faith, our God, our love for one another in community is big enough to hold us and walk with us in our grief and anger and bitterness.
nary a tear or a whimper. With her soft lips, still my mama soothed me, soothed my soul on my wayward way. Love can last, love can linger, love can rain down on the world, but love will fail, and love will leave you. That's a sure thing, all. That's a sure thing, all. Wayward away. It's a wayward way, but still my mama soothes me on my wayward way. Oh, the blonde-haired Bonnie and the one-eyed Johnny come to make a killing and lead us on so willing to a house of cards in a book of dreams, and the comfort there isn't all it seems. A wayward way, it's a wayward way, but still my mama soothes me on my wayward way. Take me to your dreams and to your garden. Take me in your arms and show me on and on. Oh, love, it isn't wasted on the living. Soothe my soul. Soothe my soul. And I need love, and I need breath. I need a song in the key of life and a peaceful death. But I need money, and I need time. I need to walk on the razor's edge and a ladder to climb on my wayward way. It's a wayward way, but still my mama soothes me on my wayward way. But still my mama soothes me on my wayward way. Still my mama soothes me on my wayward way. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Oh, no. No, 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 no. Soothe. Thank you.
You know, one of the ways that we embody community the kind of community that Lily talked about that's healing, is through this meal. Meals are how we gather around. It's how we connect. It's how we familiarize ourselves with as a family. Just last night, I was able to have dinner. My mom's turning 75, so we're doing as many dinners with family as we can. And it was my dad's side that gathered around the table. And I remember sitting there thinking of all the other times that we've gathered around the table, whether it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, and for years, and what it means to share a meal and to see one another's faces. And that is what I think of every time that we share this meal together. I think it is why Jesus began this meal in the setting of a larger meal, a meal of liberation, a meal that actually celebrated new beginnings that you couldn't quite see yet, new beginnings that were still in the waiting. Today we share this meal as it's been shared 1,000 times over. We remember the time that Jesus gathered the disciples in an upper room. And like the hospitality of Jesus, we welcome everyone to come and share in the bread and in the cup.
We remember that at that meal, Jesus took bread and he gave thanks for the bread and he blessed it and then he broke it, saying, "This is my body. This is my work and my life for you and with you. Take it, all of you, and do so remembering me."
In the same manner, our Lord took the cup, and he said to his friends, "This is the cup of the new covenant, a covenant I bring of grace and mercy and forgiveness. And so as often as you drink of this cup, do so in remembrance of me." We will receive our communion today by intinction, which is the church word that means you'll come forward, receive a piece of bread, dip it in the cup, and then you may eat it as you return to your seats. If you would like to be served where you are, please just stay where you are, and we'll come to you. Come, for all things are ready.